All right, hey guys, this is Mrs. Van Newland, and today we are going to go over lesson 5.2, the first day of it. Today you will need, as you watch this video, your math book, a notebook, and a calculator. So just a quick review, we have been talking about what a function is, and the definition of a function is for every input, there's exactly one output. So if I gave you a table of points, if I plugged in a 3, I got an 8, plugged in a 4, I got a 10. If I plugged in a 3 again, I better get an 8 for it to be a function. So every time I plug a 3 in, I got to get the same number. If I plug a 5 in and I get a 10, that's okay. As long as the next time I plug a 5 in, I also get a 10. All right, so we learned what a function was according to a table. We also learned what a function is for a graph. So if I gave you this graph and I asked you if it was a function, remember we learned you could do something called the vertical line test. So if I draw a vertical line, it crosses once, crosses once, crosses once. So yes, that one is a function. If I drew another one and it looked like this green one here, and I drew a vertical line through that, it crosses once, twice here. So this one is not a function. So that's what we learned the past couple in our first lesson. So today we're going to kind of move on. All right, so our learning target for today for lesson 5.2 is, can you generate function tables from a function rule and then use a set of ordered pairs to actually graph a function? So today, you're going to make a function table if I give you a function rule, and then tomorrow you'll probably be doing more of the graphing. So let's open your math book up to page 263. All right, on page 263, we are going to get started. So it says a function table is a table that organizes the input and outputs of a function. You can create a function table from a function rule by substituting appropriate input values into the rule, then simplifying to find the output. Okay, I have an example of a function table here. Okay, so here's my rule, y equals 2x plus 3. All we do, and I'm going to try to highlight this, all we do is we're going to pick some numbers for x, for our inputs. So like I'm going to pick a 1. I'm going to take my rule, and wherever there's an x, I'm going to plug in a 1. So all they did was put 2 times 1 plus 3, and they got an output of 5. Okay, then the next value that they did was, they said, hey, let's plug in a 2 for an input. So they took the rule again, and they put a 2 here. And they did 2 times 2, which is 4, plus 3, and they got an output of 7. Then they did the same thing for 3, for 4. It says, well, could I do the same thing if the input is 7? Okay, I want you to add this to the bottom of your table. Put a 7 there, or wherever you have some room on this page. So basically, I'm going to do 2 times 7, and then I'm going to add 3 to that. Well, I know 2 times 7 is 14, 15, 16, 17, so my output would be 17. You just completed a function table. All right, let's look on page 264 at example 1. So it says, create a function table for y equals 4x minus 1. Okay, so there is my rule. And it tells us to use the input values -2, 0, 2, and 4. So it actually tells us what to use for the inputs. Now remember, input is just another name for x values. Okay, so they kind of made an input-output table for you. So they put the inputs here, and they plugged in -2, 0, 2, and 4. Then they wrote the rule out. So they wrote 4x minus 1, and then they said, okay, instead of an x, I'm going to plug in a -2, a 0, a 2, and a 4. And then they actually want to work it out. Okay, so I'll do the first one with you, and then I'm going to have you do a couple of them. So I'm going to start with this one. When they plugged in, I should use a different color so you can see which one I'm doing. I'm going to start with this one. Now, a lot of times, you need a little space to do some work. So I'm going to do 4 times -2 minus 1. Well, 4 times -2 is -8. And here's where you have to be careful. Okay, it says -1. You guys need to remember to add the opposite so you get this correct. So I'm going to add the opposite. Now I have -8 plus 1, which gives me -9. You may also use your calculator in this, so there's really no excuse to get these wrong. But I get a -9. Okay, let me do the second one with you. Then I'm going to have you do the bottom two. So I'm going to plug in a 0 now. So my input was 0. I'm going to do 4 times 0. And then it says -1. Well, 4 times 0 is 0, -1. Again, I think I'll probably add the opposite. So I'll add the opposite. 0 plus -1 is -1. So I get an output or a y value of -1. Okay, you tried the bottom two. Pause the video and push play when you have your two outputs. All right, let's do this one. So 4 times 2 minus 1. 4 times 2 is 8, minus 1 is 7. So you should have got an output of 7. And then the last one, 4 times 4 minus 1. 16 minus 1 is 15 for your output. So you just made an input-output or a function table. All right, I want you on page 264 to go ahead and try a couple of these before I go through them. This says input, by the way, right here. Okay, so I have this rule up here. Y equals -4x minus 3. And I am going to plug in my numbers here. So why don't I do the bottom one with you, okay? Now, you guys, you have some space, so find some space to work this out. So I'm going to write my rule. -4, instead of an x, I'm going to plug in a 5, and then minus 3. Does everybody see where I got that from? Here's my rule. And I plugged in that input. Well, -4 times 5 is -20 minus 3. I'll add the opposite. Remember, you go right in a row. -20 and -3 is -23. There is my output. All right, you guys try the other three. Push play once you've tried all three. All right, I'm going to start with the top one. So -4 times x minus 3. So I'm going to plug in a -1 first because that's my input up here. So negative times a negative is a +4. Minus 3 is 1. So I get a 1 there. Okay, now I'm going to plug in a 1 for my input. So I'm going to do -4 times 1 minus 3. Well, I get -4 here minus 3. I'm going to add the opposite. -4 and -3 is -7. There is my output. Okay, my next input is 3. So I'm going to do -4 times 3 minus 3. Okay, -4 times 3 is -12 minus 3 more. It's like you're at -12 and you go back another 3. That's -15. If it helps, add the opposite. And there is my output. Now, if I want to just know, is this a function? Well, just check it out. Okay, it doesn't look like I have any repeat inputs. So it looks like, yep, this is a function as well. All right, we are going to go to page 265 now and do a couple more examples. So this example is where we're actually going to choose appropriate input values. So now we're going to be working with some word problems, and we're going to have to choose, well, what kind of inputs should I use in my input-output table? All right, so here is our problem. It says it takes approximately 770 peanuts to produce 1 jar of peanut butter. I bet you didn't know that. And I love peanut butter. The total number of peanuts, N, is represented by this function. N equals 770p, where P is the number of jars of peanut butter purchased. Okay, so let's look at that kind of again. It kind of looks confusing sometimes. So here's my function, or my equation. N equals 770p. Okay, now let's see what it said everything stood for. It said the total number of peanuts, N. So this stands for the number of peanuts. So if I'm trying to find out how many peanuts I'm using, I know that there's 770 peanuts per jar. So the P is the number of jars. Now you would think they would use like J or something, but they use P. So there's 770 peanuts per jar. And then that would give us how many total peanuts. Okay, it says determine the appropriate input values for this situation. Then complete a function table. So if I was going to make a table for this, and I'm working with the number of jars, I can't have negative number of jars. I can only have like 1 jar, 2 jars, 3 jars. I could have 0 jars, but I can't have like a half a jar, a fourth of a jar, a -2 jars. So up here in this blank, it says only what numbers make sense for this input. I would say only whole numbers make sense because you can't buy a fraction of a jar or negative jars. Okay, so some appropriate values might be like 1, 2, 3, and 4 jars of peanut butter. Okay, so they put, for the inputs, they plugged in a 1. Well, let's use our equation. It says 770 times 1. Okay, well, 770 times 1 is 770. There's my output. Now let's come to 2. So I'm going to do 770 times 2. Then I'll do 770 times 3. I'm just using this equation right here. And then 770 times 4. And I will get my outputs. All right, if you do that, you'll get 1,540. Then you'll get 2,310. And 3,080, as long as I did that correctly. I'm using my phone calculator, so hopefully I did. And you just made a function table using appropriate values for the number of jars or for the inputs. Okay, let's go to the check on page 265 and let's do another one. It says, an online photo printing service charges 15 cents per photo and $2.99 for shipping. Okay, so if you're buying some pictures, you have to pay 15 cents per photo, plus you got to pay that $2.99 for shipping. It says the total cost, C, that's important, C is the cost, for printing and shipping any number of pictures P, so P stands for the number of pictures, can be represented by this function. Okay, and it gives us the equation. C equals 0.15P plus $2.99. All right, first thing, wherever you have a little space here, I want you to write that down. C equals 0.15P plus $2.99. Let's write down what everything means. All right, I'm going to start with C. Well, if you look up here, it says the total cost C. So this is going to give me the total cost. Okay. Then I know up here it says it's 15 cents per photo. So this is 15 cents. P, it tells me, is the number of pictures. So number of pictures. And that makes sense. It's 15 cents per picture. Plus that $2.99, that's the shipping fee. Okay, that's where all of those numbers came from. So if I was going to make an input table, we want to kind of think of what kind of numbers make sense to use for P. Okay, now let's think about what P stands for down here. P is the number of pictures. How many pictures could you order from a photo place? Well, you could order 0 pictures. You could order 1, 2, 3, 4. You're not going to order half a picture. You're not going to order negative. Okay, so it says which input values for P make sense? Well, you're not going to order a decimal, so no. You're not going to have irrational numbers. I would think whole numbers work the best. So I'm going to say letter B. Rational numbers, that would include fractions, and I am not going to have a fraction of a picture. Okay, now part B, it says, can you complete the function table? All right, and then here is the rule. Now I am going to show my work. I'm going to try to squeeze it right next to the 1, just so you can see how it works. So my equation, it says 0.15 P. Instead of a P, I'll put a 1 plus $2.99. Okay, then I'll do the same thing again. I'll do 0.15 times 2 for 2 pictures plus $2.99. Then I'm going to do 0.15 times 3 plus $2.99. Then I'm going to do 0.15 times 4 plus $2.99 for the shipping. Okay, I want you to work out 3. Okay, so you guys solve that one with your calculator. Push pause, and when you're ready to check it, you may push play. All right, if you work that out, you should get $3.44 if you did that correctly. Okay, I'm going to do a couple of the other ones quick and just put the answers down. All right, so there are the 3 other answers. Again, you guys know how to work those out. It's just plugging it in. All right, so your learning goal for today was, can you complete a function table using input values to generate your output values? So basically, if I give you a rule, first of all, can you choose some different input values? If there's not a word problem, you can choose any number. So like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Can you plug those in up here to get your output values? Okay, that was your learning goal for today. All right, so to practice this for today, you are going to go into ClassKick. You are going to log in with Google, and you should see our class. I added you, so as long as you log in with Google, you should be fine. And you are going to complete the assignment that is in there. If you would need help, please raise your hand in ClassKick, and I will be there to help you. And if you can't get into ClassKick, please let your substitute teacher know, and I will get you in.